Yeah, yeah.
All right, we are on air. Happy Thursday, everybody. It is Backdrop Day. We are here to talk about Backdrop CMS, which is the comprehensive content management system for nonprofits and small to medium sized businesses or people who are otherwise concerned about the costs of maintaining a content management system. We are hoping to create a Drupal 8 comparable system on an architecture more similar to that of Drupal 7, primarily so that the upgrade will be quick and painless from Drupal 7 to Backdrop CMS. While we're creating the system, we're going to be fixing bugs that are found in Drupal 7, Drupal 8, and our own, and simplifying existing systems whenever possible. We'll also be adding new features to try and create a product more close to what people actually want. While we're doing all those things, we're going to be trying to change the APIs as little as possible, again, to decrease the amount of change necessary to get from Drupal 7 to Backdrop CMS. We're hoping to release Backdrop 1.0.0 this fall, which is very soon. So we're looking for maybe about a month left before we release, which is very exciting. And then after we get the first release out, we will continue to issue releases quarterly where we'll be able to add new features as needed. So even though 1.0 is out, the product won't be frozen in time. We'll be able to add new things going forward. In terms of our progress, we have several major things that are release blockers and a couple of things that we would love to get done in our remaining month, but maybe aren't quite as really important. So we're going to start by talking about the release blockers. The first one is our blocks and layouts initiative, where we're attempting to replace the block system that was in previous versions of Drupal with a layout system for Backdrop CMS. And this solves the problem where traditionally in Drupal you've had one layout for every page on your site, and you've needed to use the block placements saying show on this page, don't show on this page in order to control the layout, which has been less than ideal. So our layout system allows you to specify one layout that will govern your entire site, and then any number of specific layouts for certain pages. For example, if your homepage needs a different layout, or certain types of pages. If you wanted to say all articles or all blog posts display differently, you can do that as well. So blocks and layouts is in, which is great. That's been 6 or 7 months in the works, which is fantastic that we've gotten it done. We've got a couple of follow-up issues that are release blockers that just are minor improvements to the user interface and adding features that aren't currently there yet. So converting things that were parts of panels before to be parts of blocks and layouts now. And then we have a couple of follow-up issues that are non-release blockers as well, and those can come after the 1.0.0. So I think we're super close on that. If everyone who wants to help on some of the interface stuff, I think that's what's most important. But we should be pretty close on blocks and layouts.
Yeah, I'm actually not
The
sure that we
next
have any really. I'm not sure we have any release blockers in the layouts
are there
section.
no the APIs are frozen, good enough to be frozen?
I think so. I think that we're pretty much release ready in
Oh,
layout land. There's definitely a ton of improvements that could happen, but yeah, I think that we're pretty much like in a shippable state for layouts.
that's fantastic. All right, next week I'm going to reorder this release blocker section so we can talk about this at the end. Yay! Okay, so next up in terms of actual release blockers is our config management items. This is the ability to save configurations into flat files so they can be deployed easily from one site to the other. This is a problem that was solved in Drupal 7 by using the features module, which was an imperfect solution because there's stuff that just goes on at the root of Drupal 7 that cannot properly be managed in this fashion. Both Drupal 8 and Backdrop have come up with a way to solve this problem, and we just need to convert some of our remaining systems to use the new config management system that's in there. So we have recently, actually, Nate, do you want to give us an update since you've been working on this really hard for the last few weeks?
Sure, sure. So we've got almost all main systems converted at this point. There's still a couple variables left, and that's what probably this week that's where we've had some progress. Is I merged a couple of more pull requests that convert a few lingering variables, but some of the variables are actually really pretty important. Things like um, the like page cache lifetime and things like that hadn't been converted to config yet. But we merged those in this past week so that all of the main system configuration um, is now converted to config. There's another follow-up issue that I'm working on right now that is it's all a part of this meta issue 169. Or I'm sorry, it's part of a
Yeah.
sub issue on that. Let me look. Well, anyway, it's 169 is the parent issue. Converting the variables is 170. Okay. So there's a couple more variables that haven't been converted yet that I'm working on. Things like the swappable cache backend, the swappable like session handler, and all of those things. All of the things that can be defined in settings.php but don't exist anywhere in the UI are still using variables, but converting those to use quote settings instead is really pretty straightforward. So I'm working on getting those fixed. The biggest issue is that some of them are a little bit difficult to test. So we may need to figure out a way or adjust the way that our tests work in order to actually test these things. Like testing like a different session handler I don't even think it's actually really feasible or possible for us to do that. But the Drupal 7 tests like kind of worked around it in really funny ways. So I'm not quite sure what we'll do there. But anyway, variables, there's still a couple lingering ones left. We're working on nailing down like the last dozen or so. And then they'll be totally converted, which is great. Yeah, recently, like a couple weeks ago, we converted fields. Other things like node types, vocabularies, and user roles were converted like last month. And the remaining major systems include menus, languages, text formats, and actions. So we've got those four main systems left. Some of them will be pretty straightforward, like menus and text formats. Actions, we're not really sure about. Languages will be kind of difficult. And our target release date is 5 weeks away, maybe 6 weeks away, a little bit in between. And so we've got some work to make this happen, but the speed at which the conversions came along so far is really encouraging. Like we converted node types, taxonomies, and user roles all in 1 week. So I think it's totally possible that we'll be able to do this and meet our timeline. It's just that's definitely like that's the main blocker for our release, and I think it's possible that we can fix it.
Great. So other things we're working on, not necessarily release blocker, but stuff that we would love to get done before we release is getting views in core converted. So we have the views module in core, we have the system saving the CMI. There are just a bunch of pages in core that should be views that aren't, and blocks in core that should be views that aren't. I know we have pull requests in the works for replacing those listings with views, but we don't yet have upgrade paths. And last week I wrote a rather extensive documentation bit on how an upgrade path should be approached. I haven't had a chance to go back to the issue queue and see if my documentation is extensive enough for people to have actually made those upgrades, but I will check on those today and see how we're doing. If we can get one of them done correctly, then all of the other ones I think can refer to the one that's done. So if that is still confusing to people, maybe I'll try and go ahead and get that cleaned up and approved so other people can look at the one that's closest. We've also got a bunch of other stuff we're working on that is not necessarily a release blocker, and these are things that we'd love to get done either before release ideally, but also shortly after release is perfectly fine. One of those is actually, before we get to those, there are some issues that we do need to get done before we release, like our security things. There are a bunch of issues that have been opened as security releases against Drupal 7. We need to make sure that we get solutions for all of those current security problems into Backdrop before we release. So that is also a release blocker. There's also a bunch of changes that have happened to Drupal 7 that are not security related that would be good to get into Backdrop as well, just so that we're not behind where Drupal 7 is. We're supposed to be in front of Drupal 7, kind of between Drupal 7 and Drupal 8. If we end up behind Drupal 7, that's slightly embarrassing, though not the end of the world. And so we have a meta issue that's tracking all of the changes that's happened since Drupal 7.28 and 7.33, which I think is the latest current version. Um, and we just need to get all of those updates in as well. Those should be pretty quick. And there's a bunch of other stuff that we're working on in terms of keeping up with Drupal that's not mission critical. Those were getting changes to the HTML5 elements in JavaScript cleanup done. We've gotten a lot of that done already. There's just a couple of little issues that we could go through and clean up if necessary. I think they're not a big deal. Ideally, it would be nice if all of our code were consistent throughout the whole code base, but if we can't get there, I don't think that should prevent release. We also have a couple of minor projects that we're working on that we would love to get done before release, but that are not theme blockers or not release blockers. We've got an entire set of design-related tasks that include things like updating the administration theme and making sure that the installer looks nice. All of these things have been moved to, we usually talk about them every week in this meeting, but we've moved them into a bi-weekly design-specific meeting that we have that's at 12 noon Pacific time. And we're trying to get a lot of attention over there because there's other things that are design-related that we also need focus on. So in terms of what we need to do for release, it's just getting our admin theme cleaned up so that it doesn't feel like you're using Drupal 7. It feels like you're using something different. And we do have some progress happening on there. We have someone working on our style guide, which is really great. We also have designers working on human interface guidelines, which will help determine how people are supposed to interact with this software, not only in core, but that will carry over into contrib. So how vertical tabs are intended to be used, when you should use a drop button, things like this that I think will help the entire experience of using Backdrop long-term as well as just before release. And I've added a link to that meeting's agenda in this meeting meetings agenda as well. If you are super interested in learning about what we talked about today, you can also go and watch the video on our YouTube channel. Other things that we're working on are cleaning up the theme system. One of the goals is to make Backdrop easier to use than Drupal 7. That means it's got to be easier to write code for as well as easier to build sites with by clicking buttons together. And part of that process is to clean up our theme layer, which we know was a mess in 7. So we've gotten a couple of minor issues resolved already. There's a meta issue for cleaning up a whole bunch of other stuff. Also, if anyone wants to jump in that and help there, we can. Some of that stuff can probably be done after release, but we need to be really careful about what is an API break and what isn't. So a lot of it will probably have to wait until Backdrop 2 if we don't get it done in time. We've got a bunch of user experience improvements coming along also, and most of these can be done after release. So there's a huge section of things that we can clean up in terms of how people interact with the software, and a lot of it can, you know, things like adding a rich text editor in core can be done after we release. Things like consistently naming links can be done after release. But again, the sooner the better, because if we end up changing words in the interface, we're going to end up needing to change translations. And if we wait until we have translations and then change them, people are going to be super grumpy. So I think getting those done sooner than later is a good thing to shoot for. We also have a couple of things that could use a review. So if we have anyone watching these videos who are CSS or HTML masters, we have a bunch of HTML now in the layouts module that we could just kind of use an eye on, just to say, you know, are we doing things here that are going to upset the front-end experts? And then all of the CSS we have adapted from Drupal 7's CSS coding standards into Backdrop CSS coding standards. And it would be good to have someone kind of do a holistic review of all of the style sheets to make sure they're in their right places, they're named the correct things, and we're not using IDs where we could be using classes, stuff like that, just to make sure that we are close to what we actually want to be doing in terms of how we use CSS. And then there aren't any super big updates from the project management committee this week, but we do have a spot reserved in this meeting for updates going forward. One thing that I would like to share is our new mascot. Since last week, we've finally gotten Drop, our dragon, confirmed, and I would love to show off his picture to all of you. So let's see, I think I have one. I added him into our design meeting agenda. So I'm just going to pop this open and see if I can do a quick screen share. So the idea here is to create a dragon. His name is Drop, which is a little homage to our history coming from Drupal, which had a logo that was drop and was originally released on drop.org. But he's supposed to be a friendly dragon. People should not be afraid of Backdrop. And so let's see, here is his picture. Screen share. There's the dragon. So he's supposed to be our friendly little dragon. He's supposed to be a replacement for DrupalCon. The Drupal community has this great water drop logo with a smiley Kool-Aid style face on it, which every camp, conference, software project, Drupal company has been able to riff off of and turn into their own. Backdrop is our replacement for that in the Drop, our dragon, is our replacement for that in the Backdrop community. So if anyone wants to create a product or have a camp or, I don't know, just create a t-shirt with some Backdrop-esque iconography on it, Drop is your go-to guy. Our logo, the square logo on our website, is going to be really hard for people to use in that same fashion. It's not as fun and friendly, and so this is kind of our toy to play with and add your own personality, do whatever you want with him. He is up for grabs. We're currently waiting for the design files. I think maybe we got them yesterday or today, and we will try and release those for people to use. So stop screen sharing. That's my excitement for the week. He's so cute. I made him the background on my phone, so every time I have my phone, I can just show people how cute he is and be like, "Yay, it's a dragon!" Very excited. Let's see. Where were we? Other things. So things not related to the Backdrop product itself. We've got other things that we're working on as well. Our API site is soon going to be at home to change records, and we have Luke feverishly copying change records over from Drupal.org and from our Backdrop issue queue, trying to make sure that our architecture is correct on the Backdrop API site for that to happen smoothly. We also need to create an update server, and this is probably something that we'll have to wait until after we release. So maybe Backdrop 1.0.0 will have the automatic updates disabled. I don't know how you want to approach that, Nate, but we should maybe talk about that and figure out how we want to handle that. And then once we get our update, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, do you want me to give the update right now?
Sure.
Okay. Well, the basic premise is really pretty straightforward. We probably won't have time. We definitely won't have time to build an update server unless somebody comes in out of the blue and volunteers to build out the update server somehow. We won't have time to build out the update server before the initial release of Backdrop, but we can make the update module just point at a shim that is where the update server will be, and the update server will just return a flat XML response just saying that there are no updates. So we'll temporarily make it so that the update server just exists but doesn't return anything, and the update module will connect to it so that when the update server actually is there and exists, it'll gather all the data on the Backdrop 1.0 sites that are out there, even though we won't actually be returning any responses until we build out the server. So that's the idea.
Okay, that sounds like a good plan. But we do need to create the update server, so if anyone wants to work on that, let us know. Otherwise, we'll work on that after we get the 1.0.0 release out. We are also trying to work on creating a GitHub service for Backdrop so that if you create a module or a theme, you can check a box on GitHub, and that module or theme will be specifically registered as being for Backdrop. And that will allow us, when we build our Backdrop API or Backdrop CMS modules and themes pages on our own website, it'll give us the ability to go and check GitHub for all of the modules and themes that exist for Backdrop. So we don't have that yet. I know we had a couple of people who were interested in working on it way back, but I don't think there's been any progress lately. That's also something that is less critical because we don't need it until we have modules and themes, but it would be nice for it to be there early so that people who create modules and themes right off the bat have a chance to register them as Backdrop modules and don't need to go back later and turn that on. So if we have anyone who's interested in working on creating a GitHub service, I think it's fairly straightforward. You just have to file a pull request against GitHub. There's some great documentation there on how to do it. It's just not PHP. It's some other magic GitHub language. I think it might even be in Ruby or something. Is that
Yeah,
right?
I think it's in Ruby. Yeah.
So if someone knows how to do that or wants to learn, we could definitely use some help with that. We also are doing some work on our flagship website, backdropcms.org. We have a new dragon, obviously, which we would like to incorporate somehow. We also have a logo that's not currently on there. I mean, it's available for download under a press kit section, but it's not actually on the top of the site. And we'd like to incorporate some of our new colors and fonts and stuff across site-wide. So we have reached out to a designer about how to start with a template for cleaning up what we already have. But in that process, we also want to help get designs for more of the site than we have today. Like, we're going to have a place for modules, we're going to have a place for themes, we're going to have a showcase, we're going to have a whole bunch of stuff down the road that we don't need now. But it would be good that if we're going to start working on design, we at least think about, can this design be extended in the future to incorporate these types of pages? So we reached out to someone about starting a design process there. I think Darius, the person who worked on our brand, might have some free time coming up too, and he might be able to help. But we do need to do some work on our primary site to accommodate these things as well. We have sprints for working on Backdrop every Thursday. That's today, starting right after this meeting. I actually usually start earlier in the morning, but we've got meetings to prep for, so there isn't a lot of code happening so much as like email management and stuff. But if you want to work on Backdrop CMS, if you can talk to your employer about having a couple of hours on Thursday afternoon, that's a good point where you can jump in IRC and ask us questions directly, or you can comment on issues in GitHub and you'll get responses in a short time. So that's kind of what we're working on, is trying to create a global sprint day of the week where we can try and get a bunch of work done together. So Thursday's Backdrop Sprint Day. We actually had a very successful sprint at Bad Camp this weekend. Nate, I don't know if you want to give us an update on how that went.
Yeah, Bad Camp was excellent. We gave our normal intro to Backdrop talk. We had a good attendance there, lots of interest, and then we had a sprint on Sunday morning, just with intermingled with all of the other Drupal people. We established a Backdrop table, and we had two really pretty incredible contributors come along. We had one person who filed a pull request, actually he actually filed a pull request that day that fixes some issues with certain settings not being saved in CMI, and he figured out CMI, ported it in one day, and filed a pull request, which was, again, like, yay, great job. Like, people are picking up and learning the system fast enough that they can be productive within a couple hours, and that's so exciting because it's exactly what we want out of this system. And secondly, we had another contributor offer to, or not offer, but actually working on building out the plugin for Calabox to make it so that Calabox 2, which is currently being worked on at Calamuna, that Calabox 2, you'll be able to install Backdrop with a single command line execution. So basically setting up the profile, like, here's how to set the permissions, here's how to create the database, here's how to run, and then we showed him the install script that we use for testing, so he can install it from the command line. And so it's like a one line, like, bam, you have a Backdrop site, which is pretty cool. So Calabox is for localhost development, and they're excited about providing support for Backdrop, making it so that it's easy to set up a localhost and do local development on a Backdrop site or a collection of Backdrop sites. So it's pretty exciting to see it in the works. I mean, I think Calabox has a ways to go, Calabox 2, before it will be released, but when it does, it should have full support for Backdrop, which is really exciting.
And that's doubly exciting because Calabox also has deployed a Pantheon functionality built in. So if we can get Backdrop support on Pantheon and Backdrop support on Calabox, that is your full stack deployment workflow where you can get your local development for Backdrop and you can deploy to production. So I think that's really cool all the way around. That's really great that we have working on that.
Yeah, it was great, and we had a fantastic sprint, and I was just really, I was thrilled. So yay sprints at camps. It went good.
All right, so let's see. Upcoming, we have a talk we're giving at Symphony Live in Madrid on Thanksgiving in U.S. So November 27th through 29th, we're going to be going to Spain, which is super exciting for me because I've never been there before. And I'm also really excited to be participating in a Symphony conference. So Drupal 8, as you all probably know, is based on Symphony. The Symphony community is growing. They're super curious about how the Drupal community works because it's a much larger community than the Symphony community. And we're going to be going to talk about growing communities, what happened in Drupal, and as a tiny community of Backdrop, what we're trying to create over here as well. So hopefully we'll be able to give them some insight on what works and what doesn't work in a really large scale, and then also hopefully learn from them a little bit about how their community works too. We're kind of in the same position, starting on GitHub, trying to build something from software and seeing how it goes. So I'm super excited about being involved in that. I really like the Symphony guys in general. We've had a lot of great success working with them. We've had great talks with Fabpot himself when we were in Prague at DrupalCon last year. We've had a great time earlier this year when we were in Mexico City. They combined a Drupal camp with a Symphony Day. So I have really great expectations in attending that conference too. Plus, we get to see all of the cool stuff the Symphony people are working on, which is sometimes healthy to kind of take a look outside the box and see what the rest of the world is doing too. So I'm excited about that one. There's a bunch of Drupal stuff coming on next year, but none of it that is officially on our calendar yet. Drupal cons obviously are the biggest ones and most planned for farthest in advance, but we're still being pretty careful about only presenting where we're wanted. And we were requested to submit a session in Colombia, which we submitted, but then it was instantly rejected. So I think it's probably still too soon for that. But we will be keeping our eyes on where people want to hear from us. If you are interested in Backdrop and organizing a camp, or involved in a camp in your local area and you want us to come and talk to you, we are happy to do that, but you need to ask us to present there. We aren't just going to come and present without an invitation, because we need to be respectful of people who don't actually want us to present at their camps. So go ahead and send an email to me or Nate, or you can reach us on Twitter, or you can tweet at Backdrop CMS. We'll hear from you and we'll get it added to our calendar if you want us there. So that's all we have for publicity upcoming. I can see there's a couple people watching, and Nate and I are the only ones here today, but if anyone has any questions or comments, if you're watching this video later, you can also email us or tweet at us, or ask in the GitHub issue queue if you have something related to something else that we're working on. You can also find us in IRC. We're in the Pound Backdrop channel. Any other ways you can think to get a hold of us, we're usually also pretty receptive. I answer questions on Facebook, Nate not so much, but Backdrop has its own page and presence there, and we are keeping an eye on that as well.
You know what? One thing I want to add, Jen, that we don't have in the agenda, and
Sure.
And would be a good thing for us to leverage, is that we should announce that Backdrop is coming soon. And I think, well, there's a couple ways that we could do that. We could post to backdropcms.org. That would be good, and we could also use our mailing list. Like, we've got several hundred people, I think, on our mailing list, and I think it would be awesome to say, hey, Backdrop is coming, like, next month. Let's, yay, get ready for it, because right now, like, it's going to be a very quiet release, which I'm fine with, but I think it would also make it more real for people. To say that it's coming soon, rather than it just appearing one day and it's like, is that for real? Like, I didn't hear about that, So maybe, prepping people for the release, like, more publicly would be something that I think we should prepare people for.
Okay, I think using the mailing list is brilliant, because those are people who probably aren't following our website. I think it would also be good to add it, like, to the homepage, like, push up a release date. Like, if we have, December 1st or December 15th or whatever it is, just put it on the site and say, we're going to release on X date. And then if we do that, what we need to do is go through our issue queue and adjust all the 1.0 tags to actually reflect issues that we're working on that need to be done by that date. I'm happy to do that, and maybe I'll send you the list and make sure that you agree with those things. And then I think we can use the newsletter as a countdown. So we could send 1, right away, and then we can send one in a week saying this is what's left, another one. If we have information that's useful for people, obviously, if we don't, we shouldn't send one every week. But I think it also would be a good way to encourage more people to contribute. Now that they know we're getting really close, they might be more interested in trying it out, seeing if there's something they like or don't like and want to change might be super useful too. Not sure we would necessarily want a ton more issues right before release, but you never know. It might be good anyway.
Right, right.
Yeah, I'm not really sure where that fits in the agenda, as in something we should talk about every week.
Yeah, we don't have any marketing in here.
Put something in the top with like a countdown. We could do that.
A countdown of what?
Like days till release or something.
Oh. Sure.
I don't know if that's going to increase your stress level too much or not.
No, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, we've got 5 or 6 weeks regardless of whether or not we have a countdown.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. And
yeah,
then,
I think it's all good. It's all possible.
Okay. But yeah, I think we are. I think so. The big thing is how do we put this information on the website? Should we put a countdown on the website?
Oh. Yeah, I guess. Maybe we should get our dragon egg illustration. You remember how we were thinking about the dragon egg and it was going to like
Yes.
pop open
Although
when
how
Backdrop
hard it
was
is for us
released?
to get illustrations.
Well, I can draw an egg.
The lump
It's just
on
a big, black circle.
Okay. Well, if you can draw a circle, I think maybe we should put a hatching egg on the website. That's a good idea. Maybe the crack in it at this point.
Okay.
All right.
Maybe I should focus on writing the software.
Yeah. Anyone want to draw us an egg? Eggs accepted. Okay. Well, I think that's probably it for today's weekly meeting. I want to jump off of this and go get caught up on the issue queue because I know there's a ton of exciting stuff that's happened in the last week, and I've been in bad camp land, so I haven't gotten to see it. So I'm super excited to go read particularly on human interface guidelines stuff, but a bunch of other things too, like views, upgrades, paths, etc. But thank you all for watching the meeting, and if you watch later, feel free to send us questions at Twitter or email or however else you want to. And yeah, Backdrop is coming soon.
Hey.
All right, thanks everyone.
All right,
We'll see you.
thanks everybody.